Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make improvements in your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon, presented by 17 Hats. Hello and welcome to another episode. Today is a little bit different of a format because we are interviewing me. I was actually featured on another podcast, and this is going to be that interview. So it was nice to kind of change seats for a minute and get to tell my story and talk about balloons and some very specifics about workflows and nitty-gritties, because this podcast is actually produced by 17 Hats, which is the sponsor of my podcast. So it's great to be able to collaborate and share. The name of their new podcast that they just launched is called HatsOff, and it features entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who not only use 17 Hats to manage their business, but just have stories to share and tips and tricks about what it is to run your own business. So I have really enjoyed the early episodes of this podcast, and I am excited to be able to introduce you to it if you are not already familiar. So again, the name of that podcast is Hats Off, and it's available wherever you're listening to this podcast. Just go ahead and search for it. So let's take a quick break to head over to the UGlue hotline and then get into this crossover episode from the Hats Off podcast. Welcome to the UGlue hotline, where we discuss great advice that sticks. Brought to you by Pro Tapes. If you have a question or some great advice to share, click the link in the show notes to call in and leave a voicemail.
Hi, Sarah. This is Drea from Princeton, New Jersey. My company is Princeton Events Co. I'm calling in to ask a question about offerings. Do you think it's better to focus on a small amount of offerings, or do you think that it is okay to have offerings that run the entire spectrum of what balloons can do? Sometimes I struggle with everything that I offer, but I also don't want to limit myself to just a few things. So not sure what the best way to go is, but anyway, I'd love to hear your feedback on that. And thanks for all that you do for our industry. Have a great day. Bye.
Hi, Drea. It's been so fun getting to know Drea. She is in our Pumpkin Plan group, and I got to meet her in real life at Balloon Boss Summit. So thanks for calling in. Okay, good question. This is just my personal opinion. I'm a bit of a minimalist, and when I am a consumer, I hate a ton of options. Like, my favorite places to go are like a Chipotle, where it's like, do you want a burrito or a bowl? What type of meat do you want? What toppings do you want? The end. Like, I like when they guide me through the process. So I very much set my business up like that. In fact, I kind of copied their model. So now I ask, like, what arrangement do you want? So like an arch or columns, like what thing do you want? Then what style do you want it in? Do you want classic or do you want organic? I started calling organic freeform because I think that's easier for people to understand. And I stole that from my friend Emily in Utah Balloon Creations. So those are kind of the first two questions. And then from there, it's like the colors and details. There's really not that many options. I personally like being led through the order process. So that works to some degree. I also kind of feel like everything that we do fits into a certain category. There's arches, there's garlands, there's columns. Then there's like the backdrop type of stuff, like the hoops and the tiara walls and that type of stuff. And then there's helium and centerpieces. So I try to fit as many things in those categories as possible just to take the overwhelm out of it. But at the end of the day, I think the majority of people still love to see a catalog and lots of options. So I still have like galleries on my website. Half the time they're sending me inspiration photos. So I try to keep it narrow and focused just for those people who are like, I don't even know where to start. Then I send them my menu, my catalog. It's pretty streamlined. But I don't actually like limit anybody. There's very little that I'm going to say no to. Maybe like a big sculpture, I'm going to bring in someone who's more of an expert. Twisting, I don't really do because I'm just like not good at it. But I don't think on your website, that first point of sale, I don't think showing every single thing you've ever done is helpful. I like to see less. I like to see the best of the best. And I like to see the stuff you're really good at and the stuff you want to sell. So if you have something on your website that's amazing, but you never want to make it again, I would take that off your website. So I don't know if that was much of an answer. I do think people like to see variety, but I think they really just like to see quality. They like to see that you're good at what you do. And then from there, you're going to have to kind of lead them through the process anyway. For ease and for production, I always try to push arches, columns, the circle hoop, things that I can drop off, helium bouquets, right? The more we stay in that niche, the more streamlined production is, the more other people can help me, the more I have stuff in stock. When you get into custom, that's when you start losing money because you have to order more, you have to plan more, you have to talk to them more. So I'm always going to go for the easy stuff first. And that's why I kind of have some limitations on. I hope that helps. Pro Tapes is a leading manufacturer of specialty tape products like Pro Gaff, Pro Artist Tape, and our favorite balloon tape, U-Glue, which helps you create amazing balloon arrangements and decorations in less time. You can save 5% on U-Glue when you buy directly from Havin A Party using code BRIGHT at checkout.
Welcome, everybody, to the HatsOff Podcast. I am so excited to be here today with my good friend, Sarah Myers. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Amanda Rae, your host. At the HatsOff Podcast, we are diving into everything unfiltered business, live, raw stories. And that is exactly what Sarah has come here today to do, is to share her experiences with being a solopreneur entrepreneur. So we are so excited to have you. So Sarah, let's start off a little bit about you. Give us a little bit of background on your entrepreneurial journey.
Well, I feel like I've always wanted to have a business, but I didn't really connect the dots until recently. But I remember even back in fifth grade, making hemp bracelets at recess and selling them, or those little lizards that you'd weave out of beads and little keychain thing. So I always had a mind for making things and then monetizing. I didn't know that was what it was called when I was in fifth grade, but this idea of this can't just be a hobby because I'm good at it. So let's turn it into a business. But I went to college. I was an art teacher. Which gave me a lot of free time, which when you're young isn't actually the greatest. I think now that schedule would work really well. But at the time I was 22 years old. I didn't have kids. My husband had a normal job. So I would have 3 months with nothing to do. And it was awful, So I started kind of dabbling in lots of different little creative things. I started face painting at a pumpkin patch because it was, my artistic background kind of worked out. And from there, I found balloons, which if you had ever told me that's where I would land. But so now I have a balloon business that I run full time. And that's arches, columns, a lot of corporate decor, large scale stuff. And I mean, I didn't fall into it. I wanted to find a business, but you fall into the business side of it, you're just okay, I'm good at this thing. Now someone wants to pay with a credit card. I don't know how to do that. Or now they're asking for a business card. And I don't have that either. So I built the plane as I was flying it, basically.
It is such an organic, I think growing your business is such an organic thing, right? Because most of us start off just winging it, right? Just as you said, right? You start off, you do it because you needed to kill time. You were bored. You wanted to express your artistic talents. You whatever the reason is, most of us don't go into business to be I'm going to go into business.
Right.
Right. And then you're right. You wing it and wing it and wing it and just make it happen.
And I feel people, they tell that story, but they don't give themselves enough credit. A lot of people are I just kind of fell into this. And I'm really? Because I worked really hard. This was not accidental. But I think what they're trying to say is like they didn't intend for it to be as big as it is, and now you have to really figure out how to manage things. So then from there, I love the business stuff. I love figuring things out. So then I fell into kind of like a teaching education role as well. So I help other balloon people figure out those nuts and bolts. And I have a podcast. I love talking shop. Especially with creative people. I think it's fun to help people kind of get out of their own way. If that doesn't sound too harsh,
it's a teacher inside of you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's funny because we have this in common. We were both art teachers, right? And, I think the teacher inside of me is always wanting to help people, right? Like you're just like, oh, don't make this hard for yourself. Right. Right. Like I've done these hurdles and let me share. And you're very giving. You've always been very giving with all of your knowledge, which is so wonderful.
Well, I like it. I like teaching. I'm realizing I'm not as good as like a coach, and that's like a new thing that I've learned too. I think people want coaching from me, and like there is a difference. There's teaching, like here's how you do it, and there's coaching to like get you going across the finish line. That's not where my strength is. I think I'm much better at like, oh, I figured this out. Let me tell you how. Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Coaching is a different mindset, right? Because you have to get them to come to the aha moment on their own so that they buy into it a little bit more. And it's hard, especially coming from a teaching background. You're just like, here's your recipe.
Right.
Go.
Right. Exactly.
You have to have a lot of patience to allow them to get there.
Well, and that's
hard.
It is, especially like something like 17 Hats is a good example when like someone will tell me what their process is and I'm like, oh, it's so bad. Like, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just do it this exact way that I've outlined for you? But like you said, if they don't get there on their own, they're not going to get there. So that's hard for me to be like, just do it like this. It's going to be so much better. But it's hard. It's a learning curve.
We struggle with that ourselves. And I think for anybody listening, there are people like in two boats. There are people that are like, give me the recipe and I will do it. I'm that person. Right. You know, like I met with a nutritionist yesterday and she was like, well, we'll start off slow. And I'm like, why? Like, just tell me what I need to do and I will do it.
Yeah.
Like, you're the professional in the room. I have hired you. Tell me, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why I hired you. Right. So you have those people. And then you have people that's like, I've hired you. I'm listening to you, but I'm going to take what you did and take what I'm doing and try to mesh it together. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And then it's this long process of like kind of getting them there. Yeah, that's always a fun thing to explore, kind of the two sides of that coin of who you're working with, because it's very, very different. So fun. Well, let's kind of dive in to, the business side of business, because what you've done is amazing. Like, you have a killer business.
Thank you.
You have like stood, I feel like, the test of time. Like, when we think about solopreneurs, we know that most people burn out in like, okay, first off, most people don't even make it to a business, right? Like most people have a hobby and they never make it to a business. But then once you start making it into a business, gosh, once you get past that 1 year mark, you've like surpassed the majority of the people, and the 2 year mark and the 3 year. So what year are you in now in your business?
I'm an 8. You're 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like amazing.
Yeah, it's weird not being the newbie. Like, when I go to events, I'm so used to like standing up in the like 1 to 3 year mark. And now all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm in the top half of people who, there's the 40 year, 50 year people. But other than that, there is kind of this thinning that happens after like 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years. That's it. It's the 1 year mark. If you can get past the 1 year mark, you're pretty much going to get to the 3 year mark. And if you can get past the 3 year mark, then you're going to get past the 5 year. You'll get to the 5 year mark. And if you can usually get past the 5 year mark, you're figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like 5 year is kind of, that's usually the fork in the road. Either people make it and can move on, or they're like done.
Yeah.
Right. From either family, like divorce, possibly. That happens so much because it just does.
Yeah.
Or just you find devoting so much time to the business, you've like kind of lost a lot of people. I hear a lot of people say like, I lost my way.
See, that's so interesting that you said that because I've never even thought about this, but at the 5-year mark is when I started my podcast. So it was almost like I figured out the balloon side and like, I'm a bit of a self-sabotager in the sense of like, I get it. I figured it out. This is kind of easy. So I'm over it. Like I like to move on. So I'm glad I didn't burn down a perfectly good business, but that's when I kind of started the podcasting and the teaching because it fed like a new creative need.
Correct. It elevated, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but I feel like it elevated you as a business owner, right?
Yeah.
Because so many times we talk about elevating our business, right? Like making our business better, but it really is about elevating you as a business owner each step. And so that podcast fed the business soul.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was fun. It gave me permission to like experiment things and screw up, but like it'd make a good episode. You know, it was like, I'm going to do reels every single day and feel like an idiot, but I'm going to talk about it on the podcast. So there's like a reason. It was like I had an excuse to fail.
Yeah. I love that though, because you're just pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And we know that in order to level up, in order to take your business to the next stage, like you have to do that.
Yeah.
Like everybody has to do that. Right. Which is so cool. So let's talk about workflow a little bit because you're killer at workflow. I mean, you use 17 hats in like so many awesome ways and have really found ways to make it work for you, which I love. But we hear people talk about workflow and get really scared.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've always used workflow. I mean, we're like going 10 years in business and we've always had the word workflow and we've always used it as like your automation, right? Your process. And now workflow has become like a keyword, I would say, like a buzzword. Right. Influencers and educators are going, which workflow, right?
Are you ready to take your balloon business to the next level? Look no further than Havin A Party Wholesale, your ultimate destination for all things balloons. Havin A Party Wholesale is on the cutting edge of new products that will wow your clients, from top brands like Tough Tex, Jamar, Anagram, Ellie's, Premium Conwin, and introducing Brookloon, a new latex balloon line created by the Havin A Party family. They've got the widest selection to fuel your creativity. Join the successful league of professional balloon artists who shop at havinaparty.com.
So I want to dive into, from your mindset, from where you are as a business owner, what is a workflow to you, and kind of like chat a little bit about that. So step one, what is a workflow? Let's just dive in. Not a 17 hats workflow, but like just a workflow.
I am a simple workflow person. And for me, it is a to-do list to keep me accountable that repeats every client. So it's just like, these are my steps. It could be written on a piece of paper. It could be laminated and stuck to my desk. It's just the things that I'm going to do so I don't lose track of where we are in the process. Like, have I sent the invoice? Have they paid it? Did I send the confirmation? It's literally just a list of things to do. That's how I see it.
Absolutely. That's what we've always claimed it to be, right? Any industry. I mean, I always use a thing of like, you have a workflow when you get out of bed to get dressed in the morning. Right. You have steps. You physically get out of bed, one, right? You go to the bathroom, you brush your teeth, you like all of those different steps. And eventually you walk out the door decently dressed.
Yep.
Right. And so it is exactly that, but for business. So let's talk about, when you look at your workflow, like what are some of the keys, like things that, you have a very successful business. Like, what is it that helped you get there when it comes to workflow?
I think starting simple. Like, I had one workflow and now I have, like, I started with one workflow with probably like 4 things on it. And it has evolved over 8 years, like not over 2 months, like over 8 years. Now I have 3 workflows that kind of flow in and out of each other. Some of those tasks are automated. Some of them are, a little bit trickier and activate other workflows, but that like literally took me 8 years to get there. So I think people think that like your workflow is going to be like your little robot that just takes over your whole sales process. I would say 90% of my workflow is still I'm clicking the buttons. I'm selecting the email template. Like I like pumping the brakes to know that I'm not going to lose track of something. So I think just queuing up the email templates, but the basics are really an automated email that goes out after they submit the work or the inquiry form. Then there's an email that basically says I'm available or I'm not. And that's a template that I choose one or the other. Then we move on to designing what they want in terms of their balloons. I go straight into the invoice because mostly people are just buying simple things. So right into the invoice, a reminder email the week before, and then a thank you email. Like it's really simple. So some of the bells and whistles are like automations within that, like the invoice automatically gets filled in with their info and like little things like that have just made it slightly easier. But like to go along with your analogy, that's like you're making coffee every morning. So you finally figure out how to like program the coffee maker to have it ready to go, you know, like little tweaks that make a big difference.
I love this because I feel like people overcomplicate the hell out of shit.
Yeah.
And people come in and they're just like, they want all of this, what I call vanity, right? They want everything to just be beautiful. And I want to customize this and I want to customize this. And I want to, and it's like, okay, do you want it or do your clients need it?
Right.
There's things that you want, and I call it vanity. There are things that you want, but it actually doesn't serve your clients.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't serve your business.
And I just went through that, not even related to 17 hats, but I got all obsessed with like e-commerce. I was like, people need to be able to like buy their stuff online, pay, and never talk to me. And then I went down this rabbit hole of this book, The Pumpkin Plan. I don't know if you read it, by Mike Michalowicz.
You know, The Pumpkin Plan is one of my favorite books.
I freaking love it. I am doing a cohort right now of people. We're doing the Pumpkin Plan together. And by taking 2 seconds to like evaluate who my top clients are, figure out what they were buying, what they wanted. None of them were ever going to buy anything e-commerce. They were all event planners who were just going to text me and tell me what they wanted anyway. So it kind of let me off the hook and I don't have to worry about getting that feature that no one wanted.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just the thing is that sometimes we're looking for like, it's sometimes an excuse.
Oh, totally.
Sometimes it is projection of our own like self-worth. Sometimes it's like, it's not working because of so many other different reasons. And we're like, this one thing will make it work. Like we're looking for that silver bullet. And there's no freaking silver bullet to business. Let's just like clarify that right now. No silver bullet, lots of hard work. Business is so like multifaceted. It's never a one thing.
Yeah.
Right. But what really stood out in the conversation that we just had was I feel like there's two mindsets. There's a short game mindset and a long game mindset. And I feel like people with the short game mindset of like, I need this now. This needs to happen now. We're going to do this all right now. It has to be done now. They're the ones that are out of business in a year or 2 years.
Right.
Or never like satisfied with their business. The people that are going with the long game of like, okay, we're in this. I'm going to get this out there. We're going to use it. We're going to do it. We're going to evolve it. Like, we're going to build this and see how this goes, right? But realize that they're doing it for a sustainable business ends up succeeding.
Right. Well, and
what's your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. And I think maybe it's just a little bit more how I see myself, but people who like take those little micro actions. They're the ones that like, when I go to conventions, like those are the ones that come back next year and they've made like huge strides versus the people who are like, oh, this sounds awesome. I'm going to go home and like compare price and check out all the features on all the platforms. And then I'm going to buy the best CRM. And it's like, just pick one. Just like, here, I know how to use this one. I'm telling you it works. Start. You know, those are the people who are like, oh, I signed up and I bought it. Got to figure it out. Like those are the ones that I see make the most progress because it's almost like the long and short game. It's like the people who have the longevity are the ones who are able to just like take short, clunky, imperfect steps forward versus the people doing like the 20-year plan. I'm just like, you don't even know if you like this business. Like you might hate this in a year, just like, don't worry about it.
Yes. It's so funny because when we build things here, just even features here, instead of building like a massive feature first that, okay, we think a lot of, people will always say, oh, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it. And then when it actually comes time to using it, do they actually use it?
Yeah. That would drive me nuts. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah. You don't build everything. You build some of it, make sure it works, make sure it's liked, make sure people enjoy it, make sure you like it, make sure and then you build upon it.
Right.
100%.
Well, and I think, going back to pumpkin plan stuff again, another insight too I got from that book is just to ask your clients like what they like or listen to their feedback. Like, the number one thing people say to me, they're like, well, it was really easy to pay. And they're like, I love how it says paid on there. They're like, I love how it just like says paid. Like it's such a little feature that it's just like, oh, okay, awesome. That makes them happy. No one has ever been like, I wish your invoice had more pink or like a brand. Like no one cares about that stuff that like we will get so in our heads about, but it's the little things.
I can usually tell a business owner's what I call business maturity about how concerned they are about like aesthetics versus functionality.
Yeah.
So like if somebody's coming at me hardcore about aesthetics, I'm like, so I've been in business for like a year or two. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And if somebody comes to me with like a UX UI about, man, this would make this simpler, this would make this easier. I'm like, been in business for 4 to 5 years. And they're like, yep.
Yeah.
Like you can tell a lot with business maturity with that too. I think it's something that like everybody goes through.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all went through it. I went through it. The first time I signed up for 17 Hats, I didn't like it because of its font. That was my first year. That was like my first year in business. I was like, I don't like the font.
I just remember like hours and hours and long nights like on my website, like dwelling over the littlest stuff that now I'm like, it's fine. Like no one has even been to this page that I spent 10 years making, like stuff just seems really big to us. And I think that's maturity too, business. But I think also as I get older and also have made a little bit more money, I'm much more likely to hire something out and be like, it's not the way I would have done it, but it's done, and I would never have done that when I was 22 years old.
Absolutely. There's so the journey of entrepreneurship is so, I think, enlightening to who we are. And what's important, what's not important, all of that stuff. Because at the beginning, you're right. Everything seems important.
Right. I don't care. I can't spend time on this. I have a family now. Like it's different, it's hard.
I think that's a part of the overwhelm and the chaos of starting your own business at the beginning is that you don't know what the most important things are. And so everything is vibrating off of you and everything is high and hot.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I guess let's go back there. That comes from like an interesting thing. If you had to go back to like your beginning, your first like year or two in business, what would have been like, hey, here's some of these important things that I should have been paying attention to instead of wasting time on X, Y, and Z? Like what would be those things?
Yeah, I think for me, it's weird because I am like a local business. So I serve the people who live by me. And I think I spent way too much time and energy having this like kind of the branding, like I wanted this large presence. I wanted my website to rank. And really, I think I probably should have started like locally networking earlier. I think I should have figured out what type of design and stuff I actually wanted to do. Because at the beginning, you're just so hungry. You just want any work. Like you'll take anything. But I think a little bit of strategy to set up the framework of like, who do I want to attract? Because I do believe that works. And then going to the places where those people are. I just was like expecting everyone to find me on Google. And it's almost been a nice relief, especially because there's been a ton of new competition over COVID. Everyone and their mom started a balloon business because it's a low cost to get involved. You can do it from your home. You can start relatively easier. There's no training that you like have to do. So there's all this competition. And I now feel less concerned about that because I'm depending on like repeat business and happy customers and less of that, like, I just hope they find me. And now I'm able to kind of tap into my own client base. So I guess, I mean, I don't know how to do that perfectly from the beginning, but I think like a lot of the stressors that we feel like we have to get right, like our logo and our, what we wear and we, like that matters, but it doesn't matter if you have no clients. So I think figuring out 100%. Where to find those people.
Yeah, that is so true, right? Your webpage doesn't matter if people aren't going there.
Right.
And it's hard to be found on Google. Like, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, especially now because they want you to pay. And I mean, it's just harder to be found organically. So word of mouth is free and super powerful.
Absolutely. I love that. Networking is I think a huge thing that people, whether we're introverts or we don't know what to say, we don't know where to go, that's a hard one for people to kind of get out from behind the desk and spend the day or spend, one morning out of the week networking.
And it's still hard for me. Like, I don't love it. And I probably have the most interesting job in the room, but like, I don't know what to say or how to act. Like, it never gets easy, but I feel like you can spend an hour in a room of 30 local business owners and you'll have so much better luck than if you spend an hour on, like LinkedIn or posting on Instagram, honestly. It's just, it's shooting fish in a barrel versus trying to just like shout from the rooftops and hope people see you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jeff from Balloon Suite, and I get a lot of questions about how to price product, where to order product, where to get those balloons, where to get the supplies you need, and then how to manage your inventory in an easy way that isn't complicated, but also doesn't require some expensive tool or extra time every week. If you're looking for strategies to improve your business and how it operates, we've got those strategies for you over at balloonsuite.com. Check out the blog, get the value, get the business value from us. We work with hundreds of balloon decor companies, and so we know what it is you're facing. And I would love for you to get the benefit of that expertise and to check out the packages we offer to help you grow sales and get your marketing done.
Yeah, I would always tell people that I coached or I mentored, like, I'm a big Starbucks drinker. If you can see, I always have a Starbucks drink. But I'm like, every time you walk into Starbucks, you make a connection. Wherever you get coffee at or wherever you go, grocery shopping or whatever, like, make a connection with one person. Just tell one person, hi, how was your day? How are you doing? Like, find the person in line who looks as annoyed as you do and start up a conversation. And even if you say nothing about your business, you get comfortable with at least talking to people.
Yeah.
Right. The business side of it will go. And so that was because I travel so much. Every time I get into an Uber, I talk to my Uber driver the whole time.
Really?
Every time.
I'm the opposite. I look at my phone and there's not even anything on it. I'm just like,
no,
I need to be alone.
Uber drivers have the most interesting stories.
That is true. That is true.
Ever. And they always will come back to, what do you do? And so that is my perfect time to practice a pitch. Perfect time to practice a pitch because I'm never going to see them again. They're either going to engage in further conversation if I made sense, or they're going to completely go silent if they are confused. Right? So I love just engaging with people.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
And finding those moments where you would normally be on your phone and avoiding a conversation and like bringing conversation to it. I love that. So networking is like a big thing you would have done maybe a little bit differently or more
I
at
think
the beginning.
I think I felt young and like in over my head when I went to like chamber meeting. Like, I didn't even know what a chamber was. But now I look back and I was like, oh, what an advantage to be 22 years old and be the kooky balloon artist. Like, well, who wouldn't have wanted to talk to you? Like, it's just, you're the fun person. No one wants to talk to the insurance salesman or the banker. It's like, I have this huge advantage that I would say in the last 2 years started capitalizing on. And before that, I was just so almost embarrassed. Like, I don't know. I just wish I had been really proud of myself a lot earlier.
I think I don't know. Let me know if you did this. Do you feel like, I know in the photography world, it's like, I have to have this camera and I have to have this lens. And it's like your equipment equates your value for some people. right? And it's like, I'm not good enough until I have done X, Y, and Z, or I have bought X, Y, and Z, or I'm not professional enough. And so people don't really look at themselves as the professional or as a professional until whatever imaginary mark we put out there, whether it's equipment, amount of money, type of revenue, like whatever it is hit. Like, do you feel like that plays into it?
Yeah, it's definitely not gear-based in balloons, but it's definitely like, I would say like competition, like Instagram. Like you see these massive installs like the Kardashians do. And you're like, oh, I've never had a job that big. It's like, no one has. Like that's not what we're doing, you know? Like you feel really bad about the birthday party you just decorated. But I'm like, that mom just spent $400 on a birthday party. Like, that's a big job. That's a lot of money. But I think we just get very jaded by what we see on Instagram specifically. So I think we kind of poo-poo ourselves being like, oh, I'm not that good. I'm not. But like we have these unrealistic standards. You know, I feel like people have kind of understood that when it comes to like comparing your body to people that you see on Instagram. But for some reason, creative work like isn't the same. And it's like, no, it's all, you know, smoke and mirrors. Everything online can be a lie.
Yeah. I mean, I look at Pinterest too. I'm sure you guys have the same issue with Pinterest of like just you see, you know, you get a Pinterest board and they're like, I want all of this. And you're like, cool, but.
Right. Like, is your budget $10,000?
Exactly. And it's like on Pinterest, you're seeing the one very best image of the party, right? And so our minds kind of fill in the rest of the party, right? With whatever we see, which becomes a trap for business owner self-worth, but also our clients and everything else. So that's an interesting.
It's hard. I would say comparing is really hard. Because again, it's not like beauty, but it is if it's a reflection of you. Like you think like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not getting good enough jobs. I shouldn't post this thing that I just did because it's not very impressive. And then all of a sudden you backslide into like not showing any of your work because you just think none of it's good. And then it's just, I don't know. I feel like you put that out there too. And that's when you get in these sales slumps versus, I don't know. I post whatever I'm doing. I'm just like, here it is. 2 columns.
And I think that's so important because the most important thing that we can do in marketing in general, so posting on social media, YouTube, whatever it is showing up.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Like showing up because it's staying top of mind. I think that's in the pumpkin plan too, is like constantly staying top of mind.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, also, can I bring it back to 17 hats real quick? Because so 7 years I've had one workflow and I just introduced a new one because you came on my podcast and gave this little tip about following up with clients. Cause yes, I have newsletters, but there's those big clients. I call them my big pumpkins, right? And I don't want to lose track of them or their jobs. So now if it's a recurring job, like it could potentially happen next year, I now, after my thank you email, I launch a new workflow. I create a new project for like 6 months from now. It's just a follow-up project. I have a new little workflow and it's literally balloons is the subject line. And it just says, you know, hey, name, just checking in to see if you were going to want balloons at your event again this year. And it sends that email out 6 months later. And then the rest of the workflow is basically like updating the project time and seeing if they're interested. That little follow-up, I think, has made me like $30,000 this year because like I'm not losing track of those clients because I'm getting to them before they even realize, before they even start planning half the time. Like, oh my gosh, we're so behind the ball on this. Yes, our date is this day. We'll be in touch in the next couple weeks to confirm what we want. So that alone has made me so much money, and just like it's not another system, it folds into what I'm already doing. I don't have to like keep a paper calendar or like Google reminders or whatever. It's just, and so that's it. Those are my workflows. They're super simple, but that follow-up one has made me lots of money.
I love that because there's an old saying, it's like the cash is in the follow-up or the money is in the follow-up. I can't remember the exact saying, but it's so true. And without a workflow, without a system, you just forget.
Right.
You forget to follow up, you forget. And I love that. Yeah, I'm like vaguely remembering our podcast from then going through that. But yeah, you can create either a new project and start a a workflow automatically to send in like 6 months, or there's so many different ways to do it. So it automatically happens for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it.
And it reminds me, that's the thing. Like, I feel like workflows are mostly for me. Otherwise I'm going to forget to do the thing that I need to do. And I think another kind of burden I've lifted off myself is like, at first I was like, okay, I have to follow up with everybody. I need to do birthday clubs and have an annual reminder for balloons and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, I follow up now with like my top 10% of clients. That's like roughly 20 people. It seems super manageable. And if I just get those 20% repeat bookings every year, it's like more than 50% of my income. So it's not, it's not dollar for dollar, client for client. Like, you can have a couple clients that pay most of your bills for the entire year. And it just makes me breathe easy when there's those weeks where you're like, leads are kind of slow.
Well, it's the 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah,
20%
exactly.
of your clients bring you 80% of your income. And I know not every industry is like that, but I think if you track it back to income versus also who they refer to you as well, you'll see that tends to ring true for most businesses.
Right.
And so it's if you can just nurture those 20%, right? And figure out who those 20% are, which in the pumpkin plan, that is your big pumpkins.
Yeah.
Right. And it does the pumpkin plan. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend you reading the book because
it's so good.
It's amazing. I read it back in like 2016 and it's still one that I read or 2017. It's still one that I read like maybe every year and a half, just like skim through it because yeah, it's just amazing. But going back to the pumpkin plan, it also talks about like weeding out the small pumpkins.
Right.
Right. So we know, looking back, even I think that first year, because you're taking basically anybody who's willing to give you money. And I understand that financial times, like I get it. You got to take whoever.
But they're always the most demanding. I don't know why, but they always are.
Always are. People, that's exactly where I was going. People that come in with like, they're cheap, they want cheap, they don't want to pay you what they're worth. They take up the most time. They want more, they need more, and they don't want to pay you more.
And then we are always trying to spend our time and energy trying to like modify their behavior or like, how can we help these people function within our way of doing business? But then there's your big pumpkins, your big spenders who love you. They'll do whatever you say. They hardly even care what you sell them. And we just ignore them, but we're paying all of our attention to these little nuisance clients. And it's not that all clients are, I don't want to say they're bad, but like they're probably in my line of work, they're probably looking to go to Party City and pick up bouquets. That is not, if I start competing with Party City, I'm going to be out of business really quick.
Absolutely. Yeah. They just like suck your time and it's just, you got to let them go and you got to go back and say, okay, I'm not good, which I think I'm trying to remember everything from the pumpkin plan now because the pumpkin plan also talks about your non-negotiables, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. So who understanding who you're working with, who you're not working with, putting boundaries in for yourself. And then, another thing that I think people don't pay attention to enough, like that first 2 years they're in business, is their values.
Yeah.
Like who do you actually want to work with? I get it from like an ideal client perspective, but diving into the value side of it. What do they value?
Right.
Who do they value? Right. I think that's something people just don't pay enough attention to allow them to set boundaries.
And I always struggle with this too. Anytime you get into like mission, value, or purpose, it's like, because I am not a brain surgeon. I'm not curing cancer. I'm decorating parties. But again, the older I get and like with the state of the world and just like you watch the news and you want to cry, it's like, oh, making people happy is actually super valuable. Like there is a need for this. Like it's just like, you could say like Taylor Swift isn't curing cancer either, but like she's making a lot of people really, really happy doing something very fun. And I think that you shouldn't discount values. Almost sounds like such a big word, but in the party world, it's like, no, celebrating something special is a good value.
100%. I think bringing joy, bringing peace of mind, saving time, like all those are, amazing things to value.
Well, and yeah, time and convenience. That's always mine. Like I don't claim to be the best at what I do, but I make it as easy as I possibly can for people to check decor off their list.
So this brings me to another point that I love, is that everybody thinks they have to be absolutely the best at what they do.
No, I'm like, fine. I'm like, okay at what I do.
You don't, because, oh my gosh, like your clients are hiring you more to take away their stress, to do it for them.
Absolutely.
For the convenience, for the time. And most of them don't know what great looks like.
Right.
Right? Because you've been to the conventions, you've seen other people's works, you're in the profession, so you've seen what's happening in the industry. So you know what great looks like. Unless they're like the top 1% of society sometimes, they don't give a flying, you know what.
Yeah. Well, and we're renovating our home, which I think if you ever need lessons in like service-based anything, do some renovations and it will be eye-opening. Like contractors, I'm sorry, they don't call you back. They don't show up when they're supposed to. They don't like finish jobs. They'll just like take 2 weeks off and not come back. And that just goes to show, like, I am looking for like the bare minimum. I want it completed and ideally like safe. Like those are my only two expectations. And so much of it, the other stuff is the service. Like that's what I want, is good service. In terms of their actual trade, I kind of just think every electrician is capable of, I hope, like I think that they're all going to get it done. So where people really stand out is like, oh my gosh, they actually like let me pay with a credit card and like sent an email. And like, those are things that stand out to me.
Which is amazing, because that is how clients look at solopreneurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to go and hire a balloon artist, they think every balloon artist is somewhat capable.
Right.
Right? They think every photographer is somewhat capable. Every DJ is somewhat capable. Right? It's what's the shine that you add on?
Right. Exactly.
Right. And we, a lot of times we want to think that the shine is this one stellar masterpiece, or the ability to use like one thing that nobody else can do. But then if they don't even want the thing, then the thing doesn't matter. Right. But we know what everybody wants.
Right.
Timely communication. It goes back to the client experience portion of it.
I literally, right before this, I went and I signed up for our local YMCA so that I can sign my daughter up for soccer lessons. And I tried to sign up on their website. You can't do it. You can't make an account. You can't pay. I was like, ugh. So I called and they're like, you have to come in person. And I was like,
who wants to do that?
For the love of God, it's 2023. So I go in person and they're like, did you bring a check? We need a check so that we can copy the routing number. And I was like, I am going to die right now. Like they made it so hard for me to buy the thing that I wanted to buy. And I still ended up doing it because I'm desperate for soccer lessons. But like, it's like, I just, you see, once you are kind of in the groove of your own business, you see these areas where you're like, if they just made it easier, their lives would be better. Our lives would be better. Like, it just blows my mind how often you see these big companies making it so hard for you to do the thing they want you to do.
Correct. If you make it difficult for people to pay you, people will not pay you. I mean, you paid because you had an external stressor of like, this is the one place, you got to go with this place. Like you don't have a choice.
Right.
Right. But when people contact solopreneurs, they have a choice. Mm-hmm. Right? They have you, but they have the other 10,000 billion balloon artists that are now in your area.
They might also just lose excitement. I remember you saying, I don't know if it was on my podcast or something else, but you said like meeting your client at their point of excitement. And for like a mom who's like breastfeeding their baby at 2 a.m., they might really want to plan that party right now. So I want them to get a returned email immediately. I want them to have a menu and a catalog. And even if I can't fully process their order, I want them to stay excited, versus like, you'll hear back from us in 3 to 5 days. It's like, they're not even going to care.
Heart.
Yeah.
Every time I coach somebody or talk to somebody, they're like, oh, I have the auto response. I'm like, I'll get back to them in 24 hours. So I've responded. And I'm like, no, auto responses don't count.
Yeah. They hardly even open them. Like
they don't even open them. And then they forget about you, because the reality is they found you on some website. They sent you, they looked at your name probably once.
Yeah. And no one even remembers. People, even clients who like me, forget the name of my company. like Wisconsin balloon decor. I'm like, oh, it's so straightforward. But it's like, oh, Lake Geneva Balloon Company, Wisconsin Balloons and Events. Like people just make up business names. So I think that people are going to seek you out again is a lot. Like they probably won't.
Exactly. I mean, I remember back when I was doing photography, when I would book a client, they'd be like, okay, tell me again, like, what's your name again?
Right.
And I would tell them and they're like, okay, cool. Yep, we're going with you. But it's because they contacted like 5 people at one time.
Right.
And so you call them back, you tell them who you are, you go through the whole conversation. They forgot who you were from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's such a organic process that, you have to meet them where they're at right then and there when they're the most excited.
Yeah. And so I'm preparing for maternity leave. I am due in 2 months. And, I know I'm going to be, it lands in February, which is a really long or slow time for me. So that's convenient, but I am not going to be super responsive. So I did just hire a virtual assistant, which was a big step for me. And it's cool because she like having my workflow again. I'm not trying to make this a commercial. It just is. I'm sorry. But like having my workflow and everything recorded, and also it kind of cues you up for the next step. It was so much easier to onboard someone else into my existing system instead of being like, well, first I'd like write them a nice email and then I see what they say. And then I'm just going to like respond and see how it goes. And then eventually like, that's just impossible versus like, okay, here is the process. Here are the templates. Here's the menu. It's actually not super difficult. So instead of her just playing defense, like I kind of originally planned, she's already in there, like doing sales and follow-ups and processing orders and stuff. So, I think kind of my unintended outcome of the workflow was like, my process is recorded so someone else can do it. Which is, I think, a weak spot for a lot of solopreneurs because it's just us. So we don't necessarily need to have stuff written down because it's in our heads. But like eventually you will break a leg or you will have a baby or something will happen or you'll just grow and you'll want someone else included. So having that like queued up has been really nice.
I remember the first time when I was doing photography, I got an intern to come help. And I remember being so excited. This was before I had 17 hats, and before I understood process really. But I remember being so excited because I was so busy and finally somebody was going to be there to help me and take things off my plate. And she was like, okay, she came in. She's like, what do you need me to do? And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I gotta now
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was like, can you do this? And she's like, okay, how do you want me to do it? And then I'm like, this is not good.
Yeah.
Because it was also in my head, right? So I had to take the night, I had to sit down, I had to, dive out the process because I made the very bad assumption that people are like me, right?
Yeah, right.
Because you work with yourself for so long. But yeah, once you got 17 hats up, everything's there. It's like, here's the workflow.
Well, and then also if you are kind of micromanagey, like I wouldn't say I am, but I also don't want to throw this poor new girl to the wolves, but it allows me to kind of like lurk without getting involved, so I can see what she's saying to people. I can see where we are in the process. Or like sometimes I can see where like, okay, this client is being ridiculous and I need to step in. Like she doesn't want to be the one to tell him no. I'm happy to manage. Right, exactly.
You still have to manage. It's not micromanaging because like when you have somebody, I'm like, this is like one of my like soapboxes, right? Because what I've seen things go really, really wrong is people completely pass off a company to their assistant and say, do it all.
Right.
And then that is when the first few months, cool. Because you don't see the cracks, but then the cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And within a year, the brand has major issues. And it's because, interesting enough, with any business, but especially with solopreneurs, the way you show up, the way you say things, the way you phrase things, especially to those pumpkin clients, right? Those big pumpkin clients, it matters sometimes.
Yep.
And we don't realize that it matters, but it matters. And so, I think to be able to watch what's happening inside of your 17 Hats account, I'm not saying to lurk 100% of the time, but to understand what's going on is so important.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to be able to see what cracks are forming and say, well, this is the way we do it here at this business, right? Because this goes with values or whatnot. So I love that you've hired an assistant.
Well, and
it's been so easy for you.
And one of the things that she and I had to figure out was like, how do you actually fit into this? Like, I don't actually know. So I modified my main workflow. The first step now is a checkbox. And it's like, is Sarah available? So I check the box and then it tags her with her name. And then she takes it from there. Because there are some of those good clients where it's like, oh, this is like my daughter's friend's mom that we do that gala for. And like, I'll work with her. So it's a little bit of a, like, you pump the brakes and then I let her go. So just that little modification was really all we needed. And then she was in there up and running. Again, I think that would have been really hard for me to do when I was 22 years old and just starting. Now it's like, is this what I would have sold? Is this the way I would have said it? Maybe not, but like, do I have a 4-year-old and a baby on the way? Yeah. So it's good enough, like, yeah, exactly. Hey listeners, before we wrap up today's episode, let's talk about our fantastic sponsor, the Balloon Guild. Do you ever see amazing balloon decor online and wonder, how did they make that? The Balloon Guild is revolutionizing the industry by standardizing recipes, SOPs, and offering unparalleled training. Their mission? To elevate balloon artists worldwide, ensuring efficiency, profitability, and unparalleled professionalism. For business owners and their teams, the Balloon Guild isn't just a resource, it's a game changer for growth and development. For me, it's been the ultimate shortcut in finally getting things out of my head and onto paper, so I'm not making things up on the fly, and so my team can work together to create consistent, fast decor. Visit their platform today at theballoonguild.com or by using the link in the show notes. New recipes and resources are released every month.
I think that just comes from having a strong brand and having strong leadership in the brand and, so much good stuff that you've been able to do with your business over time. So it's been fun to watch you grow.
Thank you.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being on with me today. I absolutely loved it. If you could give our audience listening one action item, like what is just like one action item from what we've talked about today? What would it be? Maybe it's a mindset. Maybe it's an action item. Like, what would it be?
I would say if you don't have any workflows, I would write it down on paper. That's a really easy action item. And if you do have workflows set up, I would think about one tiny little thing you could tweak to make it faster or automated. Like for me, that was getting custom tokens dropped into my invoice. I didn't know how much time I was actually spending doing that for every client, but now that it's automatically queued up for me, it's just like, saves me a minute every single time, and that's hours over the course of the year. So little tiny tweaks.
That's amazing. I'm just going to add one thing for everybody listening is simplify.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up and brought attention to that because I think that, it's so important to understand this does not have to be complicated. Right? This can be simple and you can add to it as you grow and as you understand and as you build out things and as you learn more about yourself as a business owner and you learn more about your business, right? You can, start simple. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you
for coming on, for
it was
chatting
so fun.
with us. Absolutely. For anybody who wants to learn more about Sarah, where can they follow you at?
So my balloon business is Wisconsin Balloon Decor. Instagram is probably the most fun because it's all visual. And then if you want to check out the podcast, it's called The Bright Balloon. And it applies, I have florists and stuff who listen to it, applies to people outside the balloon world, but it is geared towards us weirdos.
Absolutely. No, I love that. Well, thank you so much. And congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
I'm excited. And we will talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening. As usual, I tried to keep it bright and light. Our presenting sponsor is 17 Hats, the CRM I use to cut the chaos and manage my entire balloon business. From the lead capture form on my website to workflows and email templates, invoicing and grab-and-go garland automated bookings, it's all powered by 17 Hats, the best customer relationship management system for balloon businesses. There's even a 50% off coupon code waiting for you in the show notes wherever you're listening. I'll see you next week in another episode.